Ever felt like you grew up just a little too fast, or maybe you know someone who just seems to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders? Well, we're going to dive into a psychological dynamic that might feel surprisingly familiar. It's a pattern that often starts in childhood, but can quietly shape our entire adult lives.
You know this person, right? We all do. They're the one who never says no. That colleague who takes on all the extra work without a peep, the friend who's there for you, literally 24/7. This quote from The Guardian just hits the nail on the head. It paints a picture of someone we can all instantly recognize, or maybe we even see them in the mirror.
So let's dig into this always available friend a bit more. Who are they really, behind that super competent, super reliable exterior? On the surface, they're the definition of dependable. But if you could look inside, they're often feeling totally depleted. It's like they're constantly running on fumes, taking care of absolutely everyone else, all while secretly wishing, just once, that they had a friend exactly like them to lean on.
So where does a dynamic like this even come from? Well, more often than not, it starts way back in childhood with a concept called parentification. It's basically when the roles in a family get completely turned upside down.
And here it is. The formal term for it is parentification. It's what happens when a kid has to step into an adult role way too soon, taking on responsibilities that are just far beyond their years. And this could be for their parents or for their siblings.
Now, this whole experience isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. Psychologists have actually identified a few distinct forms of it. The type of burden a child carries can look really different depending on what the family needs.
Okay, so the two main types are instrumental and emotional. Instrumental is all about the tangible stuff, the practical tasks like cooking, cleaning, maybe even paying bills. It's the physical labor of running a home. But emotional parentification, well, that's the invisible work. That's when the child becomes the parent's confidant, their therapist, or the family peacemaker.
This quote, wow, it just paints such a vivid picture of what emotional parentification feels like. A woman named Sadiqa described her role as being like a nurse to this brilliant but volatile surgeon. Her job was to anticipate every single need, to have the right instrument ready before it was even asked for. It's about learning to read the air and provide exactly what's needed, constantly.
And then there's a third type we should talk about, narcissistic parentification. This one is different. It's when a parent doesn't see their child as a separate person, but more like a vehicle for their own unlived dreams. They push the child to achieve, not for the child's own joy, but for the parent's glory. You might think, okay, that was childhood, it's over. But no, these experiences don't just magically disappear when we turn 18. They have these profound, lasting effects that just echo throughout a person's adult life.
This quote from a woman named Priya just captures it perfectly. That childhood job of anticipating everyone's needs, it becomes a permanent part of who you are. You develop this, as she calls it, finely tuned emotional radar that is always on, constantly scanning the room for who needs help, who's upset, and what you can do to fix it.
And look, these personal stories are incredibly powerful, but they're also backed up by research. A 2022 study from California State University, San Bernardino, actually took a quantitative look at what these long-term effects really are.
So what did they find? Well, it's pretty stark.
The study found a really significant negative correlation. Basically, the more someone had to care for a parent in childhood, the lower their levels of general trust were as adults. To put it simply, the more you had to be the parent to your parent, the harder it is to trust other people later in life.
And the fallout doesn't stop with trust issues. Not at all. People who went through this often struggle with a whole list of challenges. They find it incredibly hard to set healthy boundaries. They might even end up in exploitative relationships because that dynamic feels normal. Often, their entire sense of self-worth gets tied up in how useful they are to others. And all of this is usually accompanied by a relentless inner critic, a deep, soul-crushing exhaustion, and sometimes these surprising flashes of intense anger.
And get this, that same study found something else really important. These burdens, they rarely come one at a time. There was a strong link showing that if you were caring for a parent, you were very likely caring for your siblings too. For so many, it was a double duty, making that weight of responsibility even heavier.
Okay, so that was all a lot of heavy stuff, I know. But, and this is a really important but, the story does not end there. Understanding all this isn't about blaming anyone. It's the very first step toward healing and making a real change.
So, how do you heal? Well, the path forward is often called reparenting yourself. It starts with just understanding and acknowledging what happened, that role reversal. Then, you have to give yourself permission to validate your own story,
Your feelings are real and they matter. From there, it's all about rebalancing your relationships by finally setting boundaries, learning to say no, and maybe most importantly, learning to care for others from a place of genuine choice and love, not from a place of fear or obligation.
And this point is absolutely vital. Real healing doesn't mean you have to go confront your parents or get some big apology. That's not the goal. The goal is internal. It's to believe in your own experience, to validate your own hurt, and to find support from people who can give you that. Friends, a partner, a therapist.
A huge part of this healing journey, a really powerful act, is one of self-compassion. So many people who've walked this path talk about connecting with that little kid version of themselves and just saying, "I'm sorry you had to go through this." It's about finally giving yourself the empathy you always needed back then. And that really brings us to the core question that all of this leaves us with. For anyone who sees a bit of themselves in this story, the real challenge is right here. What does it actually mean to care for other people, generously and with an open heart, without completely losing yourself in the process?